On a rainy, pitch-black night in 1942, Sergeant Mitchell Paige and a handful of Marines stood on a ridge overlooking Henderson Field. They were exhausted, surrounded, and armed with a weapon their own brothers in arms called a joke in Europe. This gun was a failure. Its shells literally bounced off German tanks like pebbles. The Marines called it the door knocker because all it did was let the enemy know you were there before they killed you. But on this night, the joke was about to become the deadliest piece of engineering on the island. By dawn, the jungle would be silent, and over 2,000 enemy soldiers would lie dead in front of these obsolete peashooters. This is the story of how a rejected weapon and a desperate crew saved Guadalcanal. To understand the miracle at the ridge, you have to understand the 37mm M3. By 1942, military experts had already written it off. It was designed to kill tanks, but tanks had evolved. In the deserts of North Africa, the M3's light shells were laughable against panzer armor. On Guadalcanal, it was even worse. The gun weighed 900 pounds. There were no trucks here, only the marine mule. Imagine dragging a nearly half-ton steel cannon through waist-deep mud and jungle, so thick it felt like it was trying to swallow you whole. The mud acted like a suction cup on the wheels. Infantrymen would pass by, mocking the crews, asking why they were breaking their backs for a useless gun. But Mitchell Paige and his crew saw something the experts missed. They weren't fighting panzers. They were fighting the Sendai Division. And the Japanese didn't use heavy armor, they used the bonsai charge. Massed human waves of infantry. The crew made a suicide modification. They grabbed wrenches and unbolted the heavy steel protective shields from the guns. It was a gamble. Without the shield, the crew was totally exposed to sniper fire and shrapnel. But it made the 900-pound gun light enough to swing 360 degrees by hand. They turned a static anti-tank gun into a high-speed, hand-aimed turret dot. Then came the secret weapon, the empty canister round. Imagine a giant shotgun shell, 37mm wide, packed with 122 solid steel balls. When fired, the M3 didn't launch a single projectile. It unleashed a cone of leaden death that could sweep a field clean for 200 yards. It wasn't an anti-tank gun anymore. It was an industrial-grade, sawed-off shotgun. When the Japanese attack finally hit, it was a nightmare of sound and heat. The M3 South were fired at a staggering 35 rounds per minute, shattering the limits set in the technical manuals. The friction was so intense that the barrels glowed a cherry red in the dark. The hydraulic fluid used to absorb recoil began to boil. When the crew spilled water on the guns to cool them, it instantly hissed into blinding steam. Then, the worst-case scenario happened. They ran out of canister rounds. But the Marines didn't retreat. They looked at the volcanic rock beneath their feet and had a terrifyingly brilliant idea. They began firing armor-piercing steel slugs directly into the ground in front of the advancing enemy. The solid slugs hit the rock at supersonic speeds, shattering the terrain into thousands of jagged, lethal stone splinters. They were literally using the island of Guadalcanal as shrapnel. When the sun rose, the mocking stopped. The jungle for 200 yards in front of the ridge had been deleted. The trees shredded to toothpicks. The door knockers had held the line. Bodies were piled 3 and 4 deep, sometimes only feet away from the muzzles of the guns. Out of the 3,000 attackers, over 2,000 were gone. Mitchell Paige, who had refused to abandon his post even when his guns jammed, or his men fell, would later be awarded the Medal of Honor. He had proven that there is no such thing as an obsolete weapon, only crews who lack the imagination to use them. The next time you hear about a piece of junk tech, remember Sergeant Paige and his £900 joke that saved the Pacific. If you enjoyed this deep dive into forgotten military history, hit the like button and subscribe. What's another useless weapon that turned the tide of a war? Let me know in the comments.